Welcome, advocates, to another episode of the Leading Equity Podcast, a podcast that focuses on supporting educators with the tools and resources necessary to ensure equity at their schools. Today's special guest is Coach Carlos. So without further ado, Coach Carlos, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. I'm excited for today's topic. We're going to be talking about ways that we can connect with our students. But before we get into that, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you currently do.
I am a 25-year veteran of the educational system. I've sat in most of the seats, classroom, administration, and then now consulting full-time.
All right. You're also an author as well, right?
This is my third book. The book that now is my new baby is Power Engage, and it's taken the experience, years of research, and proven outcomes, and I've packaged it into my top 7, what I call power moves. And those 7 power moves are all inside the book Power Engage.
All right, let's do it. So one of those 7 power moves is about connecting and how to be a coach, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's do this because I know we've all gone, those who are listening, if you're an educator, you went to educator school, maybe you learn how to, if you're middle or high school level, you learn your subjects, you learn your content, and that's great. Yeah. That's awesome. A lot of us can say we're great with the subject knowledge that we have. However, there's another piece to the puzzle, if you will, and that's all about connecting with students. So I want to kind of start with asking a couple questions in regards to what are some things that are missing when it comes to connecting with students.
Yeah. That's that question right there is always a home run. If you want, the missing ingredient in schools is the human side. Not that we don't care about our kids, not that we don't care about our parents, not that we don't care about the other stakeholders, is that because of the busyness and the concentration of outcomes, we forget the processes that are needed for humans to perform. And the biggest thing for humans to perform is relationship. You've got to be in a performance-based relationship, and one that is mutually beneficial. It just can't be one-sided where the kids benefit and the student and the teachers don't, or the adults benefit and the kids don't. When you get into a mutually beneficial relationship, which I call performance-based, then things can take off.
Okay. All right. Well, what does that mean? Like performance-based? Does that mean like depending on how strong my relationship is with, or the reciprocation between student and staff members is how they're going to perform in class? Yeah.
And let me give you two examples of that, and your listeners will connect on one level or another. Let me start with the research side, because I know there's some cerebral people who tune in to listen to you. So let me give you some research. If you look at John Hattie's visible learning, and this brother's crazy, but he's done the hard work for us. He's taken meta-analysis, 800 meta-analysis, and distilled down those strategies that have effects, and he's labeled them with effect sizes. So if you do this strategy, you have this effect size. If you do this strategy, you have this effect size. And he's done the hard work for us. So if we look at it started off at 150 strategies. I think he's now at 250, somewhere around there. These are all strategies that work. Now, the top of the totem pole is what he calls CTE, collective teacher efficacy, meaning that your entire instructional team, do they believe the kids can do the work that's required of them? And when you have a group of people in a building believing it, the effect size is large. As you go through all of his effect sizes, you start really looking at them closer, and you realize that none of the strategies, not a one, works if the relationships between teachers and students are toxic. Not a one. You cannot pull it off. And then we've done the research that here's the quote that I came out of our research. 3 years of traveling and working with schools. Not one piece of evidence shows that high performance ever is birthed out of a low relationship culture. You can't get kids who you don't like and who don't like you to perform. Not in a sustainable model. Doesn't work. Will you get Betsy and Bobby to get the award? Yes, you can. There's always one or two, the cream of the crop. But by and large, if you want a high performing culture, it's got to be high performing relationships. Got it.
I love this topic, and it just really got me thinking, because you talked about like the Betsy and I forgot Bobby, I think was the other, yes, the other young man's name. So there are those that are at this level, and then we tend to kind of teach to the general population. So there's the higher achievers, and then there's the kind of general ed. But then I would say there are some students that could use additional support. Hence the name of this podcast is all about equity and making sure that students get whatever they need in order to be successful. How is the relationship different when you have a higher performing student, maybe a let's call it an average performing student, and then a student that still has some additional supports that's needed? Why is there different tiers to those relationships?
Yeah. Wow. See, now you're causing trouble. So the first power move in my book is agreeing to be a coach, adopting the coach's mindset. A coach steps on the field with his team, your classroom, and commits to a goal, performance, winning, but then understands each individual's player's strengths. And a real coach says, how do I get the maximum out of Carlos? He's not my high scorer, but he could be my best rebounder. He may not be my best rebounder, but he's a spark off the bench. He may not be the spark off the bench, but he's the rah-rah guy in the locker room. Whatever his strength is, a good coach assesses the strengths of their players and says, I'm going to maximize what you can do. So at my school, our commitment to our students and our customers, which are our families, and I look at schools through a business lens, and I wish more of us did so. But when I look at it that way, my promise to my customers, my clients, is that if you give me 1 year's attendance, I will give you 1 year's growth. If I come to you in the 6th grade reading on the 2nd grade level, and I show up for 180 days in your classroom, will I be reading 1 year better than when I got to you? Or are you still saying, I can't get you on grade level? No, the commitment is give me a year's growth. Now, if you give me more, hallelujah.
Right.
But give me a year's growth.
Okay. All right. So give me at least a year's growth.
Yeah.
And I love the asset mindset that you're displaying there, because one of the things I heard you say, or you didn't say, was, okay, if you're 3-4 grade levels behind reading, I'm going to get you at least a year from where you started.
Yeah.
And that right there makes such a difference from the deficit mindset or language that a lot of folks, they're 5th grade, but guess what? They can read.
Yeah.
They're just maybe a few years behind, but let's take it one step. Let's meet them where they're at.
That's right.
And then let's build from there. I love the way that you're framing that.
Yeah, that's all. And I get some teachers will say, but our district and my teachers coming down on us to get it. I get that. I do. And I sympathize for that. However, get the year's growth first. Worry about that other stuff later. Because if you die on the hill because you're concerned about what you consider the impossible, then you don't even give that young person a year's growth.
Yep. So break that down for me. What's happening within that year? Because again, we're saying we're going beyond the content. Yeah. So let's take ELA, for example. We're talking about reading. Yeah. And so they got to read books. There's got to be sentence structure and things like that. All that's there. But what does that year look like from the relationship side that's going to help at least a year's worth of growth for that student?
In the book, I talk about Gary Keller. Gary Keller is a real estate guru, one of the biggest and the baddest in the world. What does it got to do with education, Coach Carlos? Well, simply this. Gary Keller says in his book, The One Thing, is that he understood that if he wanted to be successful, is that the one thing that changes everything, Brother Sheldon, is engagement, is relationships. So what I say to teachers, if you want to start to get your 1 year's growth, your 2 years growth, whatever you think it is, none of that will happen if you don't start with relationships. The first week of school, don't even open a book. Find out who in heaven's name is in your building, who's in your classroom. Find out what their issues are. And throughout the entire year, as you unroll content simultaneously, yes, but how do I connect? Content, connect. Contact. If you're all content and you're teaching kids who are coming from low performance or low socioeconomic areas, come on. That means you're not trying to understand that you're teaching humans. Human beings need to be connected with, and that's what we know about Maslow. Maslow told us that the first one is the physiological needs, which you may or may not have a whole lot to do with, because you don't know how they slept at night and all that good stuff. But once they come to you, those needs still have to be met. And if you're not dealing with those, you just can't do the higher order thinking things. Can't do it.
I got a lot of teachers that'll tell me, oh, I can't relate to the students that are in my classroom. So I just kind of teach the way I know what works best for me, or based off of my personal life and things like that. What kind of response would you give to a teacher that said, well, I cannot relate to my students. I don't have the same likeness. I don't like the same music. I don't. Yeah. What is your response in those situations?
Yeah, now that's the question that often school leaders ask me, superintendents, building leaders. There's two ways. The big scope, the 30,000 views, two ways. First of all, everybody is not a warm and fuzzy person. They're not. That's not the way they're wired. That's not the way they are. Get it, understand it, appreciate it. So that's why engagement, relationships can't be driven by individuals in your building. It has to be institutionalized. Engagement must be institutionalized. When you put it on the individual to engage, then you get those lone wolves who are stars at it. You put me anywhere with anybody, I'm just going to engage. That's just who I am. I'm going to engage. Some people, that's not their gift. I don't have some other gifts. But engagement is something I can do. But don't compare me with another brother who's more cerebral and who really, he's a thinker. Don't compare me with him. But he needs to have engagement opportunities. So his may have to be institutionalized. So case in point, I'm working with a school in Inkster, Michigan. Oh, there's so much I could tell you about that district. But the bottom line is that the superintendent and myself came up, we're building out this platform called Love, Laugh, and Learn. That's his engagement model. So anybody who's hired into his district has to understand the three pillars of loving, laughing, and learning. He institutionalized it. So there's certain steps that you take throughout the day where you're loving on kids, you're laughing with kids, and you're learning. So he fixed that problem, or is working to fix the problems for those of us who engaging is just not natural. It's natural for me, but I may not be as smart as the next brother is in the content area of math. I could use what he knows with his strategies, but he needs some of what I do with engaging. That's how buildings need to do it, is you institutionalize engagement. You don't individualize it.
I love what you're saying, Coach. And it just got me thinking, because when you initially said institutionalized, I was thinking, oh, so is he saying, oh, just have a one-off celebration, parent engagement, something? But what I'm hearing is it's a mantra that you are, and not just words, but this is something that you are doing on a daily basis, not a celebration here and there.
Right. There's a difference between climate and culture. Mm-hmm. You've got to make engagement. It's got to be your culture thing. It's got to be your ethos. Climate is just what I feel when I pull up on your campus. That's what I feel. Culture is what it is. It's my policies. It's my practices. And it determines the people who are hired. There's a reason why I don't care where you go Monday through Saturday. If you go into a Chick-fil-A, it's the same, because they made that a culture. If you hire for us, if you work for us, you're going to feel the same thing with every Chick-fil-A you go into. It's part of our process. I'm sorry, ma'am, can I have an extra sauce? They don't say, oh, no, a sauce is 55 cents extra, sir. No, they say, oh, sure, sir, here's an extra sauce. That's a practice and a policy. And schools have to make it a practice and a policy if they really want engagement to live in their culture.
I believe they're supposed to say my pleasure, or it's my pleasure.
That's right. Right. It's in the handbook. You've got to, that's their thing. Mm-hmm. And if you go to McDonald's right across the street, whole different culture.
So what I'm hearing is that we need to maybe some of us need to rebrand our school.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Well, I
sir.
hope I'm not touching on something, but I'm just saying that's what I'm hearing.
Yes,
Because
yes,
when you hear this school's name, what do you think about
That's
when
right.
that name comes up? I know I lived in a town where there was 3 high schools, and each high school had its own reputation. There was one that was known as the poor school. There was one known as the athletic school, and one known as the academic school.
Yep. And that wasn't by chance. And that ain't by chance.
Yeah. And it's not by chance. Absolutely. And so what I'm hearing is when we're thinking about our schools, especially if we're talking from a leadership standpoint, and if we're not in that room and we're not in that space, what are the thoughts that come up when our school's name is mentioned?
Yeah. Now it's Sunday when we're doing this interview, so I feel comfortable bringing my faith into this. In Scripture, Jesus asked his disciples, his friends, "Who do men say that I want to know what they talking about? What are they saying about me out there? I want to know." And then after they answer, he asked them a second question: "Who do you say I am?" What if teachers did that to their kids? What do y'all feel? How y'all feel about me? Am I engaging? Am I fun to be with?
That could be some tough feedback, but we got to be ready to stand in it.
Come on. So
then, okay, all right. Same thing could be applied to students. Right?
Yeah.
The troublemakers.
Yeah.
The high. This one's very charismatic. This student is a loner. This one here is a problem child. There's labels.
Yes,
there's reputations.
Yes, sir.
That are said about our students in the staff lounge rooms.
Come on.
In staff meetings.
Yes, sir.
And
yes, sir.
So how does this translate to our students as well? Should we develop some sort of, I don't know, support for students who might have quote unquote bad reputations? Is there anything that we can talk about or support in those type of situations?
Yeah. So when I do cultural audits, I break students down into 3 categories. And that's after we've gotten the data, we've got the performance data, the behavioral data. I break them into 3 categories: the cream of the crop, the core of the crop, and the concern of the crop. Based on those 3 categories, they require different strategies.
Right.
If I've got the cream of the crop, I got a different set of strategies that I utilize with them. My core of the crop, I've got a different set of engagement strategies I use with them. And when you have a coach's mindset and what you're saying to yourself is, I want my entire team to win, and every class is my team. I want everybody on my team to win. My strategies are dictated by their needs. That's how I look at my students. If I'm a teacher, when students feel that you are putting together, or they feel like this is unique just for me, they respond uniquely to you because they know you've taken the time to figure out who they are.
Have you seen any examples of how rebranding, how changing or shifting the culture to where we're pushing relationships? Have we actually seen data where there's test scores go up, reading levels go up, math skills, whatever it is, things are going? Are there some strategy, or are there some examples that you can pull from that shows this works?
Yeah, I can. We had time, I could give you multiple schools, but let me make it personal and start with mine. When I took over an all-male academy, this was a dumping ground. This was a school where boys did not fit into other environments. So this was your last stop. One of the first things I did when I got there was change the culture to be more of, 1, engagement, and secondly, PBL, project-based learning, because project-based learning kinds of institutionalizes engagement. Because if you're going to work on projects, then you've got to be engaged with, you've got to be more engaging. You can't teach from the board. You've got to do it on a project level. So when I got there, our scores were in the toilet. In 2 years, 95% of my students were reading at 1.5 levels and above because of project-based learning, because of performance-based relationships. Easily done, and it lowers the stress when you're working with engagement, because now students will work at a different level for you. You don't have to do all the work. They begin to own the level because now they're working not only for themselves, but they're working for you. They don't want to let you down.
Yeah.
So I've seen it that way in my space. I've seen it that way in Highland Park with Highland Park Academy. We've turned that school around using various strategies, but I always work on the culture end. But changing the culture, one of the first things I do is parent engagement, increasing that, changing the mindset from involvement to engagement, teaching teachers these strategies here and the research and the psychology behind it. Highland Park changed their scores around. But the first thing that changes, Sheldon, is not the scores. The first thing that changes is behavior and attendance. Mm-hmm. And the scores follow. Because the kids don't want to be there. They vote with their feet. Yep. I'm not going today. And then if you force me to come, when I do get in your classroom, I'm going to show you what I'm really made of. So attendance and behavior is the first thing. The second thing is competence. The last thing to fall is competency. Attendance and behavior is first. Competency is the last thing. So the first measure I ask schools all to look at, let's look at the attendance before we get started. Let's look at behavior before we get started. Let's look at competency before we get started. Now, let's implement the strategies and then come back and look at attendance. Then come back and look at behavior. Then come back and look at competencies.
Loving this. Okay. But it all boils down to belief at the end of the day. None of this is possible. Kids are smart enough to know if their teacher don't believe in them.
That's right.
They can tell by the level of work you're giving them, if it's rigorous or not. Is this busy work? Or this is some actual stuff that's challenging my critical thinking skills? Are we participating in project-based learning? Is that even a thing?
Yeah.
Or am I just getting worksheets every day?
That's right.
So it boils down to the belief.
Yeah.
And once we show not just saying we believe in our kids, right? We actually are showing them that we believe in them. And when those things start to happen, boom, boom, boom. And like you said, man, you said this and I should have wrote it down, but I heard it and it just hit me hard when you said kids won't want to let you down.
That's Absolutely. Right. You live in Phoenix now. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
You're in Phoenix. Have you been there through high school football season yet?
Not yet.
So when you go through, I do a lot of work in Dallas, and when you go through this year through high school football, watch how many kids in Phoenix are on the football field practicing.
Okay.
In heat, in the Phoenix heat. I've seen it in Dallas. And you have to ask yourself, why are they out there letting the coaches holler at them and run them around in this heat? Because it's a mutual thing. The boy or the girl wants to play the sport. They want to win, but they also don't want to let that coach down.
That don't happen overnight.
Nah.
That's stuff that you have to build. So sometimes people want instant results. Like, hey, I only came out for a half day with you, or I only did a 1 hour workshop. We're talking about years and years of a culture or things being a certain way, and we're asking for these changes to happen. But it does take time to develop and build those relationships and to have folks trust you, the students, families, whoever, trust that you're there for the right reasons. You're not there just for a check. You're not there to pay your loans back, but you're there because you genuinely care to be there.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It starts with that belief. It starts with the faith of a mustard seed. It don't take just a little bit of belief that they can do it. And if you believe a little bit, what I know about seeds, you got to water it.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Coach, I have enjoyed this conversation, folks. There's links in the show notes where you can grab the book, Power, Engage. But I'd love for you to share any final words of advice that you want to provide to our listeners.
Yeah, if I had to share, if it was just one nugget for leaders and teachers, parents, just know that this thing does not work. It has not worked and will never work. High performance never exists in a low engagement culture. Never. So you've got to go for high engagement to get high performance.
Absolutely. So if we have some folks that want to connect with you, they need some support, what's the best way to reach you online?
Easy way is carlosjohnson.org, CARLOS Johnson.org, and that'll take you to my social media platforms. I'd love to come out and work with your staff or speak to your kids.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Coach Carlos is here. Once again, Power, Engage, 7 power moves for building strong relationships to increase engagement with students and parents. Carlos, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you for having me.